Hi everybody, Phil of Games here. We're playing through Fire in the Lake by GMT. This is the second video, and we're going to take our first turn. So we're going to go over how the event cards work, how eligibility works, how initiative works, and how the sequence of play works, and then do something with the Americans to start the game off. So the first card I put on the right here, this is going to be the first card that gets played, LRRP. And then the next card that'll get played after LRRP is Cadres. Okay, so we're acting on LRRP first. And the first thing you're going to want to do when the event card comes out, other than saying ooh, ah, and thinking about all the fun stuff it's going to allow you to do, is across the top, there are the four faction symbols. Green is the US, blue is the VC, yellow is Arvin, and red is the NVA. So this means for this card turn, the Americans will be the initiative or first eligible faction, the VC blue will be second, the Arvin yellow will be third, and the NVA red will be fourth. So when we go to our sequence of play, what I'd like to do is actually stack the eligible factions in the eligible factions box in that order, right? So you know who gets to act in which order. The top most faction gets to act first. So this means that the US is the first eligible faction. They have the initiative for this turn, and they have four things they can do with this card. The first topmost option on sequence of play is to do an operation only. This means that if we go to our action menu for the United States, on the left-hand side it lists the coin operations which the United States can undertake. On the right-hand side it lists the special abilities. If you choose to go for an operation only, then none of the special actions are eligible to do. You can't do any of these. And you can pick any one operation, train, patrol, sweep, or assault. And you could do that in any number of spaces, limited by how the instruction tells you to limit the number of spaces you can do it in. Why would you want to do this instead of doing an operation and a special action both? Well, if the United States in the sequence of play picks op only, no special activity, this means that the second faction can only do a limited operation. So they can't get a special activity, and they can only conduct an operation in one space. So it really limits the second faction as to how much they can do, where they can do it, and it also would prevent them from selecting the event card. If you had an event card that looked very dangerous to you and you didn't want the other side to play it, you can pick that top option on the sequence of play. Okay, so that's why you would pick it if you choose it. The second option on the sequence of play is to take an operation and a special activity both. This is what I always call a big move. I'm sure I will say it in the course of these videos because that's how I always call it when I'm playing the game. But what this means is you can go from on your menu for the United States, you can pick one of the coin operations and then also add a special activity to it and do both on your turn, right? Now there are limitations to this because each coin operation has certain special activities that it can pair with, and it might not necessarily be all of them. So the assault, for example, the United States can only pair an airlift or an airstrike with an assault. That means they cannot do the advise special activity if they pick the assault operation. Okay, sweep, same deal. Patrol, you can pick any special activity to do alongside patrolling, and training can go along with any special activity as well. So that's one limitation on the op and special activity. Another thing to keep in mind when you're doing operations and special activities is that you can perform them in any order. So you can perform some operations, pause and do a special activity, then go back to doing operations. You can do a special activity first, and then go do operations afterwards, or any combination of the two, right? For the US player, you want to keep that in mind because it allows you to sweep or assault in an area, then airlift your troops to another area, then perform another assault or sweep. And I'll show you how it works once we get into playing the game. I actually might even do it off the bat here to kind of get an idea how that would work. So that's what to keep in mind. It's the big move. It's the second one. If you select that, your opponent can either, not your opponent, but whoever's the next eligible faction in the sequence of play order can either take a limited operation or an event. So that means that the VC player, if the US decides here to do an operation plus a special activity, can either take the LRRP event or conduct a limited operation, which is one operation in one space, or they can choose to pass, which we'll go over. And then your third option is to take the event card. So if the US decides, oh man, place 3 irregulars outside of South Vietnam, and then conduct free airstrikes. Well, that sounds like a great way to start the game. I can really hamper the NVA with that. You could pick the card for the event and execute the event on the card. And you can either pick the shaded or unshaded event, but generally the shaded event's good for the guerrillas and the unshaded event is good for the coin factions. If you choose to do the event, one trade-off is that the next eligible faction can do an operation and special activity if they'd like. So you, by taking an event, might give your opponent the big move, right? So that's something you want to keep in mind. Or you can also help your partnering faction, like in the United States and Arvin, for example, by doing that. Okay, your last option is to pass. If you look, it's printed on the sequence of play box, but if you pass, as an insurgent option, you gain 1 resource. As a coin option, you add 3 resources to the Arvin faction, and then you get to remain eligible. So what this would mean for the US player is if they passed on the first card, the first turn, LRRP, they would go down to the pass box. The Arvin resources, which are yellow here, will go up by 3. 1, 2, 3. US doesn't have any resources of their own, which they spend. When they do spend resources, they spend the Arvin ones. So those resources go up 3. And then instead of shifting over to the ineligible faction box, the US player gets to stay in the eligible factions box. And that means that the US player gets to act on the second card that we have visible, which will come up next, which is cadres. Now, when deciding to do that, the US player wants to look at, obviously, the capability of that card and what the event could do, but also you need to look at the faction order along the top, the initiative order, because the US player needs to realize if they pass to cadres, they're still going to be the 4th eligible faction on that card. So they might not get to do what they want to do with that card if they're passing to use it. They might not. It all depends on how the faction order shakes out. Let's hypothetically say the US decides they want to do the big move of the operation and special activity. The VC player decides, oh, I really want this cadres capability next card. And I am in the first position of initiative order on the cadres card. So if I pass, I stay eligible, I gain 1 resource, and I'm going to be the first up on cadres, so I can pick that card for the event if I would like to. So that's what the VC player is going to do. This means that the yellow Arvin player has a decision to make, and they're going to go for a limited operation, let's say. Maybe they train somewhere and add some more police cubes to the map. Then the card play, once 2 factions have made their move in the shaded part of the sequence of play, the LRRP card is done. So it goes to the discard pile. Cadres move up to the current card that's going to be played. And the 2 factions that acted on the LRRP card, the US and the Arvin, are going to slide over. Oops. Going to slide over to the ineligible factions. So because they executed an op or event, they're ineligible to play on the Cadres card. This means that on the Cadres card, first eligible is going to be VC. Second eligible would be Arvin, but they are in ineligible factions box, so they can't play on this card. Third will be the NVA red, and fourth will be the US, but again, same deal. They're ineligible, so they don't get to play on this card. So this means we only have 2 eligible factions for the card. The first is blue, VC. The second is red, NVA. So that's how the event cards and sequence of play tie in together to give the different factions their options for each game turn. So I'm going to cut this video off here. I think that's plenty for one. And then in the next one, we'll start playing some turns out so you can see how some of these operations and special actions actually work. Thanks.